scariest Catholic Church stories that will make sure that you won't sleep well tonight.
Story number 3. A possessed nun's letter from the devil. Sister Margaret was a devout nun who lived a life of piety and dedication to her faith. She spent her days in prayer and contemplation and was much respected by her fellow sisters. But one day, something changed. Sister Margaret became increasingly withdrawn. The other nuns became aware of her unusual behaviors. She started speaking in tongues and making strange hand gestures, while her eyes would roll back into her head. At first, the other nuns thought that Sister Margaret was simply experiencing a crisis of faith. But as her behavior grew more and more erratic, they began to suspect that something more sinister was at work. One night, the other nuns found Sister Margaret in her cell, scribbling furiously on a piece of paper. When they approached her, she turned to them with a wild look in her eyes and handed them the paper. The letter was written in a language that the nuns did not recognize, and it was filled with terrifying images and cryptic messages. The paper was covered in strange symbols and drawings that seemed to come alive before their eyes. As the nuns tried to decipher the letter, they realized that it was a message from the devil himself. Sister Margaret had been possessed by a demon, and the letter was the demon's way of communicating with the outside world. The nuns tried to exorcise Sister Margaret, but the demon was too strong. In the end, they were forced to call in a team of experienced exorcists to help them. The exorcism was a grueling process that lasted for days. The demon put up a fierce fight, but eventually it was expelled from Sister Margaret's body. The possessed nun was left weak and traumatized, but she was finally free of the demon's influence. The letter, however, remained a scary reminder of the evil that had taken hold of Sister Margaret. The nuns consulted with experts in demonic possession to try to decipher the letter's meaning. The devil's words were filled with venom and hatred, and the images on the paper were like a glimpse into hell itself. As the days went by, the nuns began to notice strange things happening around the convent. They would hear voices whispering in the darkness, and they would feel a cold breeze even on the warmest days. Sister Margaret, who had been possessed by the demon, became a shell of her former self. She would spend hours staring into space, and she would sometimes speak in a voice that was not her own. The nuns knew that they had to act quickly before the demon returned. They consulted with the exorcists who had helped them before, and they devised a plan to destroy the letter. The nuns gathered together, and they burned the letter in a holy fire. As the paper turned to ashes, the nuns felt a sense of relief. Story number 2. The Haunting of St. Mary's Church. St. Mary's Church had been a fixture in the small town for over a century. The old building was adorned with stunning stained glass windows and a tall steeple, and was surrounded by a serene cemetery. But despite its outward appearance of tranquility, the church was said to be haunted by a malevolent spirit. The story went that in the early days of the church, a young woman named Emily had been a devout member of the congregation. She had been beautiful and kind, and everyone in the town loved her. But one day, Emily had been brutally murdered, and her body was found in a nearby field. Her killer was never caught. After Emily's death, strange things began to happen around the church. People reported hearing screams and moans coming from inside, even when the building was locked up tight. Lights would flicker on and off, and some visitors claimed to see a ghostly figure walking the aisles, its eyes fixed on them with a chilling intensity. But it wasn't until one fateful night that the full extent of the haunting was revealed. A group of teenagers had snuck into the churchyard to play a prank, but as they approached the entrance, they heard a blood-curdling scream coming from inside. They hesitated, but then they heard it again, this time closer. And then they saw her, a ghostly figure, dressed in white, with long hair and a pale face. She was walking towards them, her eyes fixed on theirs. The teenagers turned and ran, never looking back. But the memory of that night stayed with them, and they told anyone who would listen about the ghostly presence that haunted St. Mary's Church. And although the building was still used for services, no one ever stayed there alone after dark. Over time, the legend of Emily's ghost grew, and some people began to wonder if there was more to her story than just a tragic murder. Some said that Emily had been in love with a young man who was already promised to someone else. Others whispered that she had made a deal with the devil in exchange for eternal beauty and youth. But whatever the truth behind the legend, the haunting of St. Mary's Church remained one of the scariest stories in the town's history. Story number 1. The haunted history of Roche College. Roche College was founded in 1963 in Pittsburgh. It is a small, private Catholic college that has a rich history, including ties to the Catholic Church dating back to the early 20th century. However, with history comes tales of paranormal activity, and Roche College is no exception. One of the most well-known scary stories at college is about a former president of the college who died unexpectedly. According to reports, his spirit still haunts the college chapel, which was named in his honor. Some students have reported hearing strange noises and feeling cold spots while inside the chapel. Others claim to have seen the president's ghostly apparition standing in the front of the chapel during prayer services. Emily, a student at college, had heard these stories from upperclassmen, but she never really believed them until she experienced paranormal activity. One night, while studying in the chapel, she heard a soft whisper in her ear. When she turned around, no one was there. She tried to shrug it off as her imagination, but she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. Emily wasn't the only one who had experienced paranormal activities at Roche College. The campus library is rumored to be haunted by the ghost of a former librarian. According to reports, she died suddenly and has been seen wandering the stacks late at night. Some students have reported hearing books being moved and seeing chairs being pushed around when no one is there. Mike was studying for a midterm in the library when he heard footsteps. At first, he thought it was just another student, but the footsteps seemed to be getting louder and closer. He looked up and saw an old woman walking towards him, but when he blinked, she was gone. Another area of the campus that is said to be haunted is the theater. The theater is reportedly haunted by a ghost who likes to play pranks on students and faculty. Some have reported hearing strange noises, seeing objects move on their own, and feeling a presence in the theater when no one is there. One night, a group of theater students was rehearsing for an upcoming production when they heard someone laughing. At first, they thought it was just one of their classmates, but when they turned around, no one was there. Suddenly, the curtains started to move on their own, and the stage lights flickered. The students were spooked and decided to call it a night. But what do these stories mean? Are they just urban legends, or is there something more to them? Some people believe that the scary stories at Roche College are a result of the college's connection to Catholicism. The Catholic Church has a long history of paranormal activity, so it's not surprising that these stories have been passed down over time. Others think that the stories are a manifestation of the students' anxieties and fears. College can be a stressful time, and some students may use these stories as a way to cope with their anxiety and fears, regardless of their origin. These ghost stories have become a part of the college's history and culture. They add an element of intrigue and excitement to the campus and provide a unique perspective on the college's history. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, these stories are a testament to the power of storytelling and the human imagination. Each tale had its own unique turns. Whether you choose to believe in the supernatural or not, one thing is for sure. The stories that have been passed down through the ages will continue to captivate and terrify us for generations to come. So the next time you find yourself alone in a dark, creepy church, just remember to keep your wits about you. You'd never know what ghostly surprises might be lurking in the shadows.